That's funny. I have this, they gave me this button, this one big button, and I can, I won't do it, but I can turn the whole system on or off with the button.
Don't do it.
So I come in.
Don't press the button.
Yeah, if I hit the button, I go bye-bye. Hello and welcome to Talking Too Loud with Chris Savage. I am your host, Chris Savage. I am joined, as always, by Sylvie Lubau, our producer and my co-host of this very exciting show about entrepreneurship, marketing, and all the other things that get us talking too loud.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. We have a great show for you today. We have Greg Galant, who is the co-founder and CEO of Muck. Muck is a PR management platform that helps organizations find the right journalists to pitch and report on media coverage and prove the value of their work. Greg has a really interesting business, bootstrapped for a very long time. And the conversation today is, one where we really got into nuts and bolts of how to scale, how to build a company via bootstrapping, why that works, dynamics of venture capital versus not, PR, how it's changed, going after new opportunities quickly, being naive, all our favorite topics. We covered a lot of exciting stuff today.
You rounded the bases.
Full rounding the bases. Here we are, and we got to start the show with the classic question. Sylvie, what's got you talking too loud?
Well, it's funny, rounding the bases. I recently went to a Mets game and pretty good seats, actually.
La-di-da, no big deal.
NBD. I'm just realizing I never Venmo'd my friend for the ticket. But
so really good seats.
Really good seats. But my partner was like, I think I'm going to catch a foul ball. He felt pretty sure about it. And I was like, I don't know. It's kind of a bold statement to make. 20 minutes in, foul ball comes right into our section. He leaps up, he catches it. It was an exhilarating moment. It was crazy. It was crazy.
That is exhilarating.
And also just, talking too loud about seeing baseball games live. They're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Was it wonderful?
The only thing that wasn't wonderful, this also has me talking too loud, was the hot dog. Nathan's,
okay.
I don't know what was going on. Didn't deliver.
That's
Didn't deliver. It was the first dog of spring. A little loud about that in a not so good way.
Yes. Well, that's too bad. It's funny. My 5-year-old Olympia really wanted to play t-ball. So she's playing t-ball.
Love it.
And she had a game yesterday that we went to. They play 3 innings. Every kid gets to get up and bat. Last kid always hits a home run, as determined by the parents. Kids around the bases, and it ends. But I will tell you, it was slow. It was very slow. And I kept saying, this is just like the real thing. Slow as shit out here. 3 innings, 5-year-olds going, they're kind of having fun, but they're all mostly not.
I feel like that's ripe for meltdowns.
Yeah. If you were to look at this scene of children, there's probably 20 kids. I think 2 of them were having fun. I think the rest of them, the pizza before, that was fun. The ice cream after, that was fun. When it started sprinkling rain and they all hid under one blanket, which happened, that was fun. But the actual standing in the field waiting, not fun. Even the swinging, hitting the ball, some of the kids hit the ball pretty well. They're like, good job. They're like, what are you talking about? They have no idea. They weren't having fun. So it felt like the real thing to me.
Yeah.
That's,
it's interesting because they made some rule changes so that the game actually moves a lot faster. There's a pitch clock now. So the next batter only has X number of seconds to go to get up to bat. And
in the MLB?
Yes.
Was this just instituted?
It's recent. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know about this.
And it was, you could feel it just moves so much faster. It's wild.
Oh, that's great. They needed to do that.
Yeah. Anything else have you talking too loud over there?
I have this new setup here that we're working on.
It's a big deal.
And so I have more lights, and I'm actually looking at you. What'd you say? A blue wall?
A blue wall.
Play to the wall. I'm looking at you through a teleprompter. So I have you, your face is I'm just looking at your face. I don't see a camera or anything.
Mamma mia.
But it's sweet because now it's easier to have eye contact. We think we're going to get higher quality stuff consistently. And obviously we're doing Talking Too Loud. I'm recording lots of videos and for internal purposes and external purposes. And so it's like awesome to have the setup be really on point. And actually, we have this like little series we're doing called Fix My Setup. And so the crew that is redoing my setup is also redoing a bunch of other people's setups, and that'll be coming out later with all the specifics of the gear we used and all that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
Speaking of getting into how things are made, let's jump into this interview with Greg about how he built and runs Muck. There's a lot of stuff to learn in this one. Greg, so good to see you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Good to see you again.
How's life? What's going on these days?
Yeah, life's been good. I'm based in Miami now, so things are starting to really heat up here, and keeping busy with all the new turns on the internet.
Well, as you know, this show is called Talking Too Loud because when I get very excited, as I do often, I can't control the volume of my voice. It has been that way since I was a child. It still happens all the time. I'm constantly waking my children up. It's a problem. But we like to start the show by asking our guests, what has them talking to it? What's got you excited these days?
Yeah, I'm sure I won't be the only one to say this, but AI, all the latest turns in generative AI. You heard it here first.
Breaking news.
That's right. But it's, obviously got big implications for the whole world we're in with public relations, content, all that. So we've been spending a lot of time learning that. We've already released our first AI product, and it's been, it feels like kind of one of those turning points, like back when social media first came out, when we got this company going, and then when the iPhone first came out. So it feels like kind of one of those really pivotal shift moments where you have to rethink a lot of things in business.
For people who don't know, can you tell us what is Muck and how did you get started? And then we'll get into, all the parallels and things that are changing after that.
Sure. So in a nutshell, Muck today is public relations software. It helps companies, both Fortune 500, startups, PR agencies, large and small, find the right journals to pitch when you have a story idea, figure out the best journals to pitch to get it covered in the news. Monitor the news, know whenever your company's mentioned, which especially for large companies is essential, and then build reports so you can see the effectiveness of PR and see how it fits into the marketing mix. Backing up to how it started, though, in a way, it actually all started with podcasting. So when I graduated college in 2005, I was really interested in what was called RSS feeds with enclosures at the time. Later became podcasting. I decided just to start a podcast. So I had this idea to interview entrepreneurs about how they got started, which, today is a common format, though, lots of people have great spins on it. But back in 2005, no one had ever done it before. So I started one of the first podcasts about entrepreneurship. I interviewed Reid Hoffman back when LinkedIn had 50 employees.
Wow.
That's wild.
That's the first podcast he was ever on. Founder of Yelp. Got John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard Group, inventor of the Index Fund, a bunch of other great entrepreneurs. One of the people I had on was Ev Williams, the founder of another podcasting company called Audio. And I was also trying to start a podcast ad network back in 2005, which in retrospect was over a decade too early to market. So that one didn't work. But
hey, I know about that. That's okay.
But I'd stayed in touch with Ev because we were both doing stuff in podcasting. We were talking about ways to work together. I saw Audio never worked out, but I watched Ev pivot Audio to a little side project called Twitter. That led me to sign up for Twitter way early. That's how I got @Gregory on Twitter and later got on Instagram too. So I was witnessing that early social media revolution, and I saw there was all these great people first on Twitter, but no way to figure out like, hey, who should I follow? Who's interesting? This was back when it was like still a big deal that like even just a celebrity would be on any social media platform. So had the idea that we could launch a website where you could vote with a tweet for who's the best on Twitter. And no one had done Twitter voting back then or like viral things on Twitter. So figured we could get people to want to vote if we called it an award. We were trying to come up with a name. thought, hey, tweets are short, so we'll call it Shorty Awards. The other constraint was it had to fit with our $8 branding budget, which is what it costs to buy a domain name on GoDaddy, and no one had registered shortyawards.com yet. And we built this website in 2 weekends, put it up, no promise of an event. Within 24 hours, Shorty Awards became the top trending term on Twitter. And then we were like, oh shit, people are going to want to come to this thing. And I announced, like, right after it went viral, I'm going to be like, it's going to be in 2 months. Because I was worried that, like, the Twitter fad would end soon enough. Because this is back in the days of, like, Friendster and MySpace. And everybody's like, oh, every social media site's a fad. Yeah. So I was like, we got to launch this thing soon so that we get it out before the social media fad
before
ends.
It's over, yeah.
Yeah, and I knew nothing about event production. So knowing what I know now about event production, it's insane to say you're going to do an event in 2 months.
Isn't
but
that the
we didn't
magic?
know better.
Isn't that the magic of being naive, which I just love? Is like, knowing what you know is like, I'm not going to do this. But back then it's like, oh, I mean, 2 months seems like more than enough time, but you're not thinking about venue and food and people's travel and where they're going to stay and all these things. I love it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how we got started. So we announced it. Luckily, this is before the Fire Festival, but luckily it didn't end up like the Fire Festival. When I watched that, I was having a little PTSD. I'm like, oh shit, that could have been us. But yeah, luckily
side note, isn't he trying to do Fire Festival too?
Oh yeah, you going? Well, I see you there.
I'm gonna go. Are you gonna go?
if you're in, I'm in.
Okay, good. All right, keep going.
So we did that first one. Actually, the first one was in Brooklyn, back in Dumbo before it was cool, and we had MC Hammer there,
What?
Gary Vaynerchuk back when Gary was still the Wine Library guy.
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal came by video. And these were like, there weren't that many celebrities back on Twitter yet. So we were getting like a lot of the people who were on it. And it was just the craziest 2 months of my life. I mean, in those 2 months that we found the venue, the sponsors. But what really struck me was that we got a ton of press coverage all inbound. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, BBC all reached out to us to cover it. The Wall Street Journal reporter even came to Brooklyn to interview me. And back then, no one from Manhattan wanted to go to Brooklyn for business. Now Brooklyn's cool.
Yeah, Brooklyn's, yes. Oh, Sylvie's a Brooklynite, so she's definitely going to tell you Brooklyn's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm with you, Sylvie. But remember, like back pre-2010, it was very hard to convince anyone who lived in Manhattan of that.
To cross the bridge.
Yeah, I still remember there was this restaurant that opened up called the Brooklyneer in Manhattan, where the idea was that you could get food from Brooklyn in Manhattan so that Manhattanites didn't have to travel to Brooklyn to try the food and drinks of Brooklyn.
Oh, boy. Wow. That's funny.
So that's the era that we're in. So we get all these journalists to come to Brooklyn. They all cover it. And from launching my own stuff, like when I launched my podcast advertising business and my own podcast, it was always a struggle to get the press to cover it. And I saw that, like, hey, the press were on it with the Shorty Awards. I was reflecting, I realized, like, oh, all the journalists, they're using social media to figure out what to write about and to promote their work. And they were kind of like the first group of professionals doing that. Now lots of people, now every real estate broker is doing that and whatever. But back then, this is like a really new thing. So like, wouldn't it be cool if we launched a site where you could just see all the journalists and easily find their social profiles and see what they're putting out there? And that was version 1 of Muck. We built the site in 2 weeks. The name came from playing with muckraker, this term that Teddy Roosevelt coined for investigative journalists. And it was originally kind of derogatory. It's like, hey, you're digging through the muck to find a story. But then journalists kind of took it as a badge of honor, where they were like, oh, this is a sign that I'm actually like doing my job and I'm not just regurgitating press releases. So we took that idea of like a muckraker plus the idea of like a magazine rack or a news rack, place you could find all the journalists and all the news in one place. And again, $8 branding budget. Nobody had registered it yet on GoDaddy, so we registered it, threw it out there. It was originally free. We didn't have any business model in mind, but I was kind of this mindset where like, hey, if we can build a website in 2 weeks, why bother thinking about the business model? Because if it doesn't work, we'll just move on. We've only lost 2 weeks. It's not like we're signing a lease for a restaurant and, it's going to be a huge liability. So built it. At the same time, we launched it. Then we were trying like a bunch of other ideas, but we saw over the course of a year, 10,000 journalists requested to be listed on Muck. And it became kind of like the industry standard. The New York Times was linking to it on their intranet so that journalists could see which of their colleagues were on there. And it was kind of like the watering hole for the news industry.
I'm like riveted by this story, and also feels very familiar in the sense of like thinking you have a plan, but not really having a plan, like being naive as you jump into things. And then that's like kind of the superpower for getting started, right? And like making progress. So I love the story, but can you also like why? So journalists, why did they want to be on Muck? Like, why did they decide that was like a good idea? Because if they're already on Twitter, is that good enough?
Yeah, it was a few different things. It was like a market credibility. We haven't had and still have our own verification system that verifies the journalists in the context of what news outlet they write for and what beat they cover. So that was a big element of it. And kind of similar to Shorty's, as a way to like kind of get more legitimacy and get more followers and be found. Okay. And then soon after we layered in, and what makes it very popular now is it'll automatically figure out what articles they've written and add that into a real-time portfolio. A lot of them get a friend or set up their personal website or try setting it up on Squarespace. But then every time they write an article, they have to update their website.
Yeah, which is super
busy
annoying.
Doing their main job, so we automate all that for them and then let them edit it. So we built a bunch of value for them on top of that. But initially it was kind of see and be seen. And then, so it was initially this free website. But being in New York at the time, I'd run into a lot of PR people. And they were all like, oh, you do Muck? I love your site. I use it to figure out who to pitch. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, we're helping you do your job. And then I'm thinking like, wait, we've got an audience of professionals. We have great data. We built a brand. The only thing we don't have is a product to sell. And then I was watching kind of friends of mine. This is before SaaS was a term really, like back, this is like 2010. But I just looked at these companies that had these reoccurring revenue models. Like actually Hootsuite won a Shorty Award that first year and rebranded to Hootsuite at the Shorties. And I saw they had a SaaS model that was working well, and I was looking at MailChimp and FreshBooks and companies like that. We had a lot of ideas for software tools we could build for the PR community to help them find the right journalists. We're like, hey, what if we layer on a search engine to find journalists and had workflow to add them to media lists and do outreach. So we had all this idea for functionality we could build for the PR world. And from doing the Shorty Awards were always profitable, but super stressful because I'd have to first sign a venue contract obligating us to spend first tens of thousands and then hundreds of thousands of dollars no matter what happens, and then scramble for sponsors to pay for it. And I was always like, shit, if we don't sell these sponsorships, like we're going to be bankrupt. We're on the hook for all this money.
Each event is literally like life or death for the company. It's just like
exactly.
If people don't show up and we don't have sponsors, we're gone.
That's right. And not only that, but like even after you sign them, it's like, when are they going to send the check? And I'd be like waiting, looking at the mail every day, like, hey, has the check showed up? Because I kind of need the cash to pay the venue.
That's funny.
So I was looking at these reoccurring business models, and it's just like, hey, if you could having not just the revenue and the profit, but the revenue predictability seemed awesome. So I was like, hey, we've got all the makings here for a reoccurring revenue business, so let's go for it. So then in 2011, we kind of pivoted Muck and we rebuilt it from scratch. For anyone technical out there, we the first version was a really hack job PHP site, so we rebuilt it from scratch in Python. We kept all the free parts free, and then we added on this SaaS model. We called the first version Muck Pro. We've since just kind of rebranded it to Muck. But added on the SaaS model we launched it in December 2011, though we got some customers on even earlier. And it's been kind of off to the races. We still have a lot of those customers that were started with us in 2011 are still customers today.
That's awesome. I mean, I love hearing the story of, I'm not going to call them pivots because you weren't like changing direction, but like this very rapid evolution and the learning, not knowing what's next. And even the simple insight of like, hey, looks like this subscription thing is working for Hootsuite and MailChimp, like maybe we should do that. And that's similar to us too. Like when we started, like the things that we were competing with on the professional business video side were all enterprise, boxes that people installed. And we're like, what if we just do this subscription thing? Like that seems like this is better, right? And it's funny how those little decisions, it can feel little at the time, add up to a very big difference over the long term.
Yeah, it's well said. It's the magic of compounding.
Yes. Now tell me, that time, you had one of the first podcasts on entrepreneurship. You made the Shorty Awards kind of like, on a whim. You figured out you're walking around talking to PR professionals, realizing they're using your product. Fast forward to today. What do you think of the landscape of where we are? Like, do those same opportunities still exist for early stage entrepreneurs just to like find their way into them?
Yeah, so it's a very different world now. So our business has evolved. We're almost 300 people with Muck, and the Shorty Awards is now an independent company with a 5-person team and still profitable and growing. My world's extremely different than what it was at the start. Although I still try to kind of keep that mindset in mind because tech's always changing and you never know where the next thing is. But I think there's always opportunities like that. When I started my podcast in 2005, there was this feeling of like, we missed the boat. Like Yahoo clearly is dominating everything, and maybe a company could get lucky and sell for 30 million to Yahoo, like Flickr did, which was kind of the top social network of the time. So I think that there's just always opportunity. And actually, this AI thing really reminds me of what it was like. Like when we got started, I think the big shift was social media, and we just launched wafer thin ideas on the social media APIs, and then we added more and more to them, and they evolved into really robust companies. But they started out, as projects we could build in 2 weeks. But because the tech was so new, you could make a big splash if you're on new tech. So probably what doesn't exist today is being like, oh, I'm going to launch something on the Twitter API and go viral. Because people have been, game the shit out of Twitter for 10 years. Not in a bad way, but, people have optimized it.
Yeah.
Or same with like SEO, where like a decade ago, most companies weren't savvy about SEO. So if you knew a bit about SEO, you could really get ahead. And now it's like everyone's, SEOing everything, and there are cheap CMSs you can buy that have the SEO built in. So it's a lot harder to get ahead in that channel. But there are always new channels, and I think that's what's exciting now, about AI and generative AI, both with the APIs themselves and the plugins, where we're all figuring this out in real time. But I guarantee you, there'll be opportunities today where someone with very little resources will figure out how to use it in a unique way before anyone else. If they're smart enough and can figure out how to build that business as they go, I'm sure we'll be looking back on today, and there'll be some scrappy entrepreneur who's getting started today who has a massive company in 5 or 10 years because they were the ones to get ahead of it in a given industry before the incumbents do.
Tell me if this resonates for you, which is, I feel like one of my lessons of building Wistia is I look back and sometimes like something, there's been a bunch of places where we got this right, and there's been places where we got it wrong, where we launched something, some number of people started using it, and we decided, I don't think this is like that valuable, or I'm not sure about it. And we basically underestimated what would happen with just like continued effort on it. And so then like other places with continued effort, it's compounded, it's gotten really big. Does that resonate with you? That like things that can start small can grow really big, but it's kind of hard to see that in the moment?
Oh, 100%. It took us It took us several years with Muck just to get to $1 million in revenue. I mean, we pretty much bootstrapped it the whole way up until last fall. Yeah, it took a lot of years to get to $1 million in revenue, and it was hard because like the Shorty Awards were bigger than Muck for those years still, because that took off faster. And I had friends of mine who had like agency businesses where in their first year they'd have more revenue and profits than we did, because it's easier to get to initial scale with an agency business and just get a few clients will pay you a few $100K a year, and then all of a sudden you have $1 million in revenue and you have some nice profits that you can take home. So those first few years of Muck it was actually kind of a challenge to keep ourselves motivated, just because like we felt the promise, but the numbers just weren't that big to really support having a bunch of money, having kind of excess for your lifestyle. But so it was like a matter of like kind of having that faith that like this can really compound, similar to like, when you have like savings advice and people are like, hey, just put $1,000 in your IRA. It'll, trust me, it's a good idea, even if that's all you could afford. I think it's that same thing, especially with software businesses, where it's like, as long as you can see how it can get big, you got to kind of accept those first few years that you're not going to necessarily see it in the bank account.
It's interesting because I feel like I'm glad you've had the same experience, because it can be frustrating too, right? Like you launch a thing, like shouldn't everyone use this? And then a small number of people are using it, but you underestimate if you have like 500 people using a thing, that's actually a lot. And if 500 people are using a thing and they really love it, they're going to tell more people and you're going to learn from them, and you can turn that into 700. And like, because in this moment with AI, it's so easy to make these things in a weekend or 2 weeks. And then I think people make it and they're like, oh, holy crap, like this is making some money. Should I sell it? Like, or will this be differentiated or not? And it's almost like, well, it starts with basically no moat. But if you zero in on that use and those customers and the things that you're doing, and you stay on it for a really long time, that often can be, I think, the difference between like real success and, I'm not going to call it failure, but like real success and just like flashes in the pan. And it's like, just if you underestimate the size of the world, the size of these markets, then it's really easy to stop. And it's easy to think that like that AI thing that you're doing won't be differentiated. And then on the other side, if the people who can figure out how to stay on it, that feels to me like one of the most underrated, like misunderstood parts of entrepreneurship. Is like, if you can just stay on the problem, then you can scale it and figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then I think that also speaks to kind of the capital structure and how you set yourself up for success. Because I see a lot of people, they don't set themselves up to go after it long enough, because they're like, oh, I got to raise money and I'm going to, rent an office and jack up my expenses. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, you've raised enough money for 18 months. And if you don't show X progress in 15 months, you're out of business. Or even you raise a bunch of venture capital, but now, the venture capitalists are all on like a 4-year time horizon. And for us, like 4 years in, we didn't have a whole lot to show for it. Maybe we would have been worth a couple million, but it would have been a great outcome. So it's like setting yourself up. It's like, I think both like what you said, we're seeing the promise early on so you don't give up too soon. You also have to be careful that, it's not a bad idea and you don't work on a bad idea pretty soon.
This is a challenge.
But if there are people who love it, and you're seeing that grow, I think that's where it's powerful to set yourself up to go after it a while. Because for us, it's been, with Muck it's been a 13-year journey. I know you've been on a long journey too. And I always think about like, if we took money, even 4 years in, and from VCs who had like a set timetable, and they wanted us to sell 8 years in, 8 years in would be, about 5 years ago. And like, just the way compounding works, we would have had, whatever, a tenth the revenue that we have today. And because multiples expand as you get bigger, it would have been worth, some tiny fraction of what it's worth today. And the only difference is, could we work on it for 8 years or 13 years? And it's not like a sexy thing, and it's not, some brilliant idea. It's just like, how long can you work on the problem? Like you said.
I love the way you put that. And I think it's like such a misunderstood thing that like, it feels like, and I mean, you've built Muck in such a different way, and Wistia is very similar in that like, we never have you raised capital recently, but at scale, knowing what you want to do with it versus like searching for that problem in the early days. And it's funny, we had a bunch of competitors in the early days that raised a lot of money, and then they went out of business. In like, after we started in 2006, so it was like 2008, 2009, 2010, a bunch of them, like, the great financial crisis, I think, hit them. They couldn't get the sales that they wanted to have like super rapid revenue growth. But we were just like, as they all went out of business, just got all their customers and just kept chugging along. And then as the market showed up, like, we were there with the product. And I think it's like this thing that people don't. Well, actually, I should ask you the question. Like, today, do you still love what you do?
Still love it. Yeah, I mean, to me, what's really fun about it is everyone's like, they have two different things. They're either like, aren't you burnt out, or aren't you bored? And I think I'm not burnt out because we never took VC and went the unprofitable growth route. Because my friends who did, it's like every 18 months they have to go out fundraising, which sucks. You have to talk to dozens of people and have them all tell you what's wrong with your business. And then you get stuck with these random people that you meet in this very short, compressed time span, and they're now on your board. And when you're unprofitable, they have a lot of control because, whatever, regardless of what it says in the legal docs, if you're like, oh, I might need this person for more cash in 12 months, you kind of got to do what they say.
This is a point that people, I don't think, get. It's not commonly understood. Like, this idea of they don't have control, but if you're losing money, then you need money. You're going to need them for sure. And therefore, you actually are giving up a form of control. And yes, you could do something to cut costs, but it's going to be cutting people. So that's like emotionally one of the hardest things you can possibly do, especially if you believe in the vision of what you have. So it's just like, go further, because this is not a thing that I think everyone understands. And this is something that like you and I share, we've done it a different way. And I think like it's helpful for folks to hear what this is like so that they understand this option.
Yeah, I think, maybe a good analogy would be like, let's say you're 25. You can either stay in a studio apartment and pay for it yourself, or you could stay in a really opulent apartment, but your parents are going to help you with the rent.
Ooh, this is a good
analogy. And you decide to go for the opulent apartment. Your parents don't have any legal control over you at age 25, but you need them to send that rent check next month or you're going to get evicted. So if your parents tell you to do something, you kind of got to do it, or you got to move to the studio. And there's nothing wrong with living in a studio at 25, but it would kind of suck to downsize from the opulent apartment to the studio. So it's the same thing with the company. If you're bootstrapping, you don't get the nice office. It's going to be harder to get attention. You're not going to be able to hire as experienced people early on, but you control your own destiny. And if you take money, even if you negotiate hard and you're like, hey, we're doing a safe note and have board control, I can appoint 5 board members and you only get 1 board seat, and it says in the docs, I don't need your approval for anything. If I'm unprofitable and you're on my board, and I know I'm going to need, and I'm so unprofitable, I know I'm going to need another round of funding, I need you, Mr. or Mrs. VC, because either I'm going to need your check when I run out of money, or maybe I'll go and raise from a new VC, but that new VC is going to ask me, hey, is your current VC going to also invest in your Series B or your Series C? Because if they're not going to invest in the next round, that's a red flag, because they know the business better than anyone, so they don't want to invest again. Like, they must know something I don't, and then I probably don't want to invest. So you're really beholden to this investor as long as you're not profitable. The other thing is that the investor is going to push you to stay unprofitable. And that's, I think, another thing people don't understand, because you think like, oh, they're a finance person, they're a money person, they must want me to make a profit. But the way that it works for VCs is that they get paid a management fee based on how big their fund is. So the VC, their number one objective is to be able to raise their next fund, because that's what keeps them in business. I mean, they also want to make a great return long term, but their biggest pressure is always going to be, especially if they're a newer, inexperienced VC, it's always going to be, do I have enough credibility to raise my next fund? Because if I don't, I'm out of business. My livelihood's gone. I got to figure out how to feed my family. So how are they going to raise the next fund? They have to show on paper that their existing investments are worth more than when they invested. So let's say they invest in your Series A and you get a $10 million valuation. If you're like, hey, I can get to profitability and then we're going to go long, we're going to build this great business over 5 or 10 years, and then we're going to exit and we're all going to be rich. The VC is going to be like, that doesn't sound so good, because there'll be no validation that your business is worth more in that 5 or 10 years. And I won't be able to raise my next fund because I can't go to my investors and say, hey, look, this investment's worth more than before. Whereas if you go out and get your Series B and you get valued at 50 million in your Series B, it shows I've already gotten a 5X. I can go to my LPs and be like, hey, look, this bigger investor validated that this business is now worth 5X what I invested. So I'm a genius, invest in my next fund, which I'm going to raise in 3 to 4 years after my first fund. So the incentives are inherently misaligned. Not that the VCs are bad people, but they want to be successful. They want to raise their next fund from their customers, which are their investors. So it creates this tension, which is fine if you're in the next Facebook or Google or some super fast business where the market materializes right away. But you were just like cranking up your risk when you take that VC money, that if the market doesn't materialize, as Chris, it sounds like what was the case with your peer companies when you were getting started. Yeah, you don't have the time horizon. And the other thing is like the risk assessment, where like the VC is going to be like, hey, I'm going to invest in 10 different entrepreneurs. One of them will be the next Google. 2 of them will have okay outcomes. The other 7 will go out of business, but that's fine because I found the next Google, and that'll return my whole fund several times over, and I'll be rich and my investors will be rich, and I'll raise my next fund, and I'll go on panels talking about how great it was working with Larry and Sergey. But for the entrepreneur, it's like, wait, I've got a 1 out of 10 chance of being the next Google, and that'd be awesome. But I have a 7 out of 10 chance of my equity being worth 0, and I got to go find my next job, and I'm probably unemployable because, once you've been an entrepreneur, it's very hard to go and work for somebody else. So 7 out of 10 chance my life's going to kind of suck after this. Or, I could maybe have like, I don't know, an 80% chance of building a profitable business, which would be awesome. So, I personally would rather have an 80% chance of building a profitable business that'll make me millions of dollars and, create great jobs for my whole team and impact an industry and be fulfilling work over a decade or 2 decades than a 1 in 10 chance of being the next Larry and Sergey, if that means I'm also accepting a 7 out of 10 chance that I'm bankrupt. So that's what you have to be thinking about as an entrepreneur. So I'm not saying you should never take VC, early stages in an unprofitable business, but you just have to realize like the amount of risk you're taking, and you have to assess the market and be really confident that like your market is going to develop in the next like 1 to 2 to maybe 3 years and not longer, and that you're going to have like this huge multi-billion-dollar outcome. Because in the middle, you think like, oh, it's going to only be a $50 or $100 million business. Like that'd be awesome to have, but you're forgoing that option when you take VC.
I think that was perfectly explained. I hope that folks who are listening to this who are, considering raising money or figuring out how to start their business or digging into AI, like really like think deeply about that and look at what the options are. Because like also, if you build a business that is profitable or actually has revenue, you always have the option if you want to go faster to raise money. But if you don't go that approach and you're losing from the beginning and while you're just searching, I think your point of like, hey, it's 1 in 10 or it's 1 in 20 even at like massive success, but like understand what the percentage is of failure, which is pretty high. Okay, I want to go back to PR and brand, and I kind of want to set this up around, the other thing that's happened with AI, right, is like it's changing search. We know that. Google just released their announcement yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, on like, hey, no surprise, we're going to have generative AI results in search, which means basically everything above the fold is not going to be links to your site. It's going to be answers that they're sourcing from all the content they've seen. This is one example of how things are changing. We know that advertising has gotten much more expensive and obfuscated. It's harder to see what people are searching for. There's all these things that are making it harder to grow, more expensive. The changes with iOS and the privacy changes there that have made Facebook advertising less effective. And so when I look at all of this, what I see is that in the future, brand is going to be much more important than it's been. It's been important, but like it's going to be more important. You need people to actually search for your company directly. They need to know what your company does generally at the highest level. They have to have some affinity for it. They need to have a connection to it. And that also to me seems like it's going to make PR more important. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's like the world we're getting into is a world where brand is more important, PR is more important, customer experience is more important, the things that actually generate word of mouth?
100%. I think early on it was like these channels, you could hack it and forgo having a brand. And now, like you said, people are gonna be looking for that brand, when they're searching or seeing things in social. The other thing that's really powerful about earned media is there are a lot of things you can sell to people that they don't know they need. I think one of the best case studies is Airbnb and Bill Gurley, the famed investor from Benchmark, who is one of their biggest investors, had a great tweet talking about how they really built the whole business on earned media. Because before Airbnb came around, no one woke up and they're like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna travel. Let me Google like stranger's house I can stay in. It wasn't a category, so there was no SEO to be had. There was no intent. But when you got this idea out, like, hey, there's a trusted way you could rent a guest bedroom really cheap and be with an awesome host with trusted reviews, or rent out a whole home, but in a way that's much more elegant than what was before it, which was kind of doing a sketchy arrangement over Craigslist. It obviously worked, and now Airbnb's at a huge scale and a profitable company. And now people know to seek it out, but that Airbnb brand really matters because anyone could build a marketplace tomorrow to find someone, or you could still find an apartment to rent on a number of their competitors or even Craigslist. But the Airbnb brand is, it's almost, it's that even if you weren't using Airbnb, it's like Xerox. Like you're like, oh, I'm staying at an Airbnb. Not like, oh, I used Airbnb Corporation to find the place I'm going to stay. And that was all built through earned media because a new idea, they could reach out to journalists, every market they went to, tell the story, et cetera. And, now the universe of earned media people, that PR has to think about has expanded from just journalists. And we've expanded Muck from just journalists to include podcasters like yourself, YouTubers, Substack writers, et cetera. So people are going to be getting information in a whole lot of different ways. So I think that's going to be very important. The other thing is that, I think we're going to have like a new, just like we had SEO, I think we're going to have like AIEO or AIO. We got to figure out what the acronym is. AIO. Yeah, but you're going to ask this, when you ask AI, like, hey, what's the best software to host my video on? Yeah. Like, it's just getting trained on all the same shit that Google indexed. Yeah. So, people are going to find ways to influence the AI. So I don't know exactly how all that's going to play out because it's so new. I don't know when this recording is going to be posted, but it was like last night that everybody was posting those screenshots of the Google Bard results and the, taking over the SEO space. But I guarantee you the second there's some new technology way of finding information, marketers are going to figure out and going to figure out how to insert themselves there. And I think the public relations and people some marketers. I mean, essentially public relations and earned media are the same thing. It's just like any media you get that you're not paying for. And it kind of gets less attention because it's like less mathy and generally gets less budgets, and it's harder to prove the ROI. But I think the ROI is much more powerful because it's that earned media that really builds brands, that tells the story. I mean, even OpenAI, right? Sam Altman, the OpenAI founder, he tweeted like, I've been telling all my startups they have to have, viral loops and good SEO. And yet OpenAI had none of that, and it's the fastest growing company ever. And it's earned media, right? It's everyone tweeting about, writing about, telling their friends, like, look how amazing this is. And so there's like that big element where people kind of don't have their eyes open to it, but earned media PR is really the fastest way to build a brand.
Yeah, and I think it's like that, the earned media, word of mouth, it feels mystical or something. It's like, well, how will I possibly do this? Like, how can I get more of it? Or I've talked to entrepreneurs who are afraid. Like, they're getting it and they're like, well, how will I continue to get it? And in my experience, it's basically like when we're getting a lot of it, when it's really working, it's like you're actually doing remarkable things, or you're doing things that are indicative of a larger trend. PR is, and earned media, getting someone writing about you on Twitter or mentioning a podcast or writing about you in the New York Times. Like, I think that, and tell me if this is how you also see it. Like, usually that's not just because of the thing you did is so interesting. That could be it, but that's like the exception. It's often because you're doing something that's interesting, that's indicative of a larger macro level trend, right? Like, all these companies are bootstrapping and they're ending up successful. That's a story that is relevant to anyone who's considering how they should fund their company, right? Can you just help us understand like how that really works? Like why do people write stories about some things and not others? Because when it's your thing, it can feel like, of course it's so important, but like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we see that's the biggest challenge in PR, both for entrepreneurs and also for corporate executives at Fortune 500s, where everyone's like, I built this thing, it's so great, the world should want to cover it, and then, hey, PR person, or hey, journalist, look at this wonderful thing I did, go write about it. But you have to remember, like, the journalist is waking up every morning, and I gotta write about something that readers care about. We survey journalists every year. We have this State of Journalism survey that is free for anyone who wants to download it. And the biggest thing that they say that makes them want to write about a story is it can be connected to a larger trend. And, if you think about it, when you read the news, just look at it. How many things are just like crazy one-offs? Look at this thing, look at that thing. Most things are like on a big trend. Interest rates are rising, war in Ukraine, during the pandemic, remote work. Now it's return to office. Like, when you start thinking about that, you realize that most news is tied to a big trend, because people want to read about the big trends, and the big trends are important. Like, they're trends for a reason. This is how society's shifting. People want to read about that. So you have to realize, like, the journalists, they don't get just to write about whatever they want. They have to write about things readers are interested in, which are connected to these trends. So you have to think, how's my story connected to the trend? So maybe you've worked on your new SaaS app that uses AI to make you the perfect cocktail recipe. And you're like, this is so cool. It's a new cocktail app. Well, cocktail apps aren't a trend. But let's go back to it. Well, it's AI. AI is a trend. So do you want to talk about how AI is going to revolutionize drinking in the cocktail? That could be a fun story. It could be a trend on the fact that you're bootstrapping and interest rates going up is a big trend, and everyone knows, well, interest rates are up, so it's harder to raise money, and you've found this great way to bootstrap because you're using AI to write some of the code, so it cut down your programming costs. Like, that's the story now. Everybody wants to write about that. You're doing it remotely. You started your company, you don't have an office, remote work's a trend, or you decide that for this app, everyone needs to be in the office because we're going to mix all the cocktails. Return to work is also a trend. And maybe also, you're a entrepreneur with an unusual background. You emigrated here, you're from a minority group, it's underrepresented in entrepreneurship. That's a trend that people want to write stories about. So you have to look at your, all these different aspects and figure out what the story is. Remember, I was once helping this entrepreneur out. She was an engineer, I think, at Rent the Runway, and started her own fashion tech company. She was pitching journalists, but she was like embarrassed that she wasn't big enough to have a PR person. So she started by emailing these journalists without identifying herself as being the founder. Did a very generic pitch, like, we've got this cool new fashion tech technology. No one responded. She was asking me like, hey, no one responded. What's wrong? What's up? Is my story not interesting? So I looked at her pitch. I was like, just be honest and make it like you were talking to another person. She redid the pitch and she's just like, hey, I'm an engineer. I used to work at Rent-A-Runway. First of all, female engineers, especially back then, very underrepresented. Also, journalists love hearing from entrepreneurs because they're always getting pitched by PR people. And most of our customers are professional PR people, and they're very good at their job, and most of the time it is appropriate. But if you're an entrepreneur with no money, like, that's cool. Like, the journalists like hearing from the scrappy entrepreneur and like knowing they'll get access to that person. So she just revamped the pitch to just be honest and just be like, hey, I'm this former engineer starting my own fashion tech company, and it does this. And she got like 50% response rate off of 10 journalists and got plenty of press after that. So it's often like you just got to kind of step back and realize like what am I doing that connects to the big trends? What's unusual and unique, and how will my pitch stand out?
Love that. That's such a great example. And if you're listening and you have not pitched your story, that's how to do it. Okay, talking about pitching stories and episodes, let's make some content right now. You have the next Shorty Awards on May 24th, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, can we do like a quick Shorty Awards of the tiniest or the most innovative or impactful things in your apartment and life right now?
That's a great question. So, tiny most innovative things. I've got I both got my oversized Muck Rack mug, but also I love this Cactaki water bottle where it tells you the how far you are in your hydration for the day. So it keeps you on track for 2 liters a day. It's also perfectly sized to fit in a cup holder in an airplane or a car. Whereas like I like those like Nalgene hiking water bottles when I go hiking, but then like if you take it anywhere else, you don't know where to fit it and you have to unscrew it.
That's very
the top
true.
comes off like so. So this has been a huge one. How many do you want? I can keep going.
What's the tiniest, most innovative thing about living in Miami that deserves a Shorty Award?
I would say that it's got a lot of sides to it. I'm really into cycling. It's a great cycling scene. So I'd say cycling in January is probably the biggest highlight of Miami for me.
That's great. I love, those are great examples. And I mean, it seems like the bottle and the bike also probably go together. So
all about staying hydrated.
Yeah. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people connect with you to learn more?
So on Twitter and Instagram, I'm just at Gregory. So easy to find there.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, you can find me. I think my username is Galant, but you search Greg Galant. There aren't that many of us. Just got on Blue Sky, but I wasn't on Blue Sky early enough to get at Gregory, so I'm at Galant, and it's with one L. And then you can check out Muck Rack, of course, MUCKRACK for anyone listening. And I've got a lot of content up on there. We do a lot of webinars with journalists talking about what they want. I think, am I missing any obscure social networks? It's still on Snapchat, I think, but I haven't posted any content.
No TikTok? You don't have a TikTok?
You know what? I'm really late to the TikTok game. Although we actually had Musical.ly, the predecessor of TikTok, kind of debuted a lot of their new stuff at the Shorty Awards back in the day.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure I could have asked for equity and gotten some, but this is why I would be a bad investor. I didn't get any equity in that, so I'm going to stick to being an operator.
There you go. Greg, good to see you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing the story, and I hope to see you soon. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't expect that in this conversation that we would go so deep on entrepreneurship and the difference really between bootstrapping versus raising money.
I think this is the first time I really understood it.
Yeah, really?
The apartment analogy crystallized so
Perfect.
much for me. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's and it's visceral, that feeling when he was talking about like, so let's imagine you have the palatial apartment you can't afford by yourself and now you have to give it up. Pretty hard to do it.
Yeah.
Not impossible. And I think it's funny. I remember once we did the buyback, I remember a friend of mine asked me, he's like, hey, did you have to do this? Like, why'd you do this? Why? Like, couldn't you have just done nothing and kept running the business the way you wanted to run it? And I was like, I think a big part of this is like psychological. It's if we know that we actually have control, if we know that we're focused on the long term, if we know that we're going to be forced to be profitable, if we know all of these things, I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to be happier. And ultimately, that's actually really important to match like you as a founder to the business you're trying to build. And that psychological barrier is real. And I think we underestimate that, and we underestimate setting it up for that. We underestimate compounding. We underestimate if you have something working, what that really means in terms of how many people could use it and how big it could get. And so it was fun to get into all that stuff with Greg. And I'm glad he was able to explain in a way that like it really made sense.
Totally. I think the other thing that was wild about this interview is just thinking about like the early days of Muck and the Shorty Awards and almost kind of like backing into a product. Like it seemed like they had the brand, they had the Shorty Awards that was kind of taking off. And then like Greg was saying that he heard from other PR folks that like they were using Muck in a really specific way. And we hear a lot of people who come on the show and talk about like product first and like not brand first. And this was, I don't know, it was just interesting to hear the flip side.
It's also just the specifics of finding your way to an opportunity. I mean, it could be finding your way to the right career. It could be finding your way to making a band. Like it could be almost anything. And I think we underestimate the serendipity and the fast learning that comes from being naive and just trying things. It's like perfect is the enemy of done is like also what you think about is like you try to come up with it. And we certainly made that mistake in the early days of Whiskey. Like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to make this incredible, website. It's going to have all these artists on it. They're going to be a job board. We're going to monetize the job board. The job board is going to let you search in different areas and different, all this crazy stuff was the stuff pre-Wistia. It was so complicated. And we had to convince ourselves that this really complicated, really specific idea was going to be the secret to building a big business. And then when it hit reality, it was like, it's all bad. It was all a bad idea. But very quickly, we found our way to things that worked just by trying them. And I think that that's just really underestimated. And also often why the advice that you hear for startups is like, just try, just start, just try. Because no one knows it's going to work until you're actually doing it and you're learning. And then can you actually hear the learning and change and pivot and grow and scale? And I think you can, but you have to have a system and a business and a structure that actually allows you to stay on the problem. So anyway, yeah, it's fun to talk about that. I'm glad we got that out there. And like every episode of Talking Too Loud, if you like the show, if you're learning something, if you have suggestions for us about guests or topics you want us to cover, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can always email us at ttlpod@wistia.com, or you can find Sylvia and I directly on Twitter. I am C Savage on Twitter. Sylvia is Give Me the Loot. We're both on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, Chris Savage. Lots of conversations happening there. And don't forget to rate and review the show if you like it. That's always helpful.
Always.
Did I miss anything, Sylvie?
Got it all.
Great. Well, good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll talk to you soon.